create a better connection between the brand and the customer. So I think we're looking at different ways to incorporate it where we can see value, and it can, and not just for the brand, but for the customer as well. So I think we're not just looking at AI as like a blanket like replacement. It's like, where can it really, solve a problem?
If you believe we can change the narrative, if you believe we can change our communities, if you believe we can change the outcomes, then we can change the world. I'm Rob Richardson. Welcome to Disruption Now. Welcome to Disruption Now. I'm your host and moderator, Rob Richardson. As always, it's great to be joined here at 1819. If you're watching this, please like, please comment. That's how we get our message out more about all the disruption and all the creators and all the brilliant minds we have on here that are disrupting common narratives and constructs. With me is Adam Kahn. He is the Chief Creative Officer for Gray Midwest. We're going to have a discussion. Do you see AI for creativity as a threat? Is it an opportunity? Is it both? I don't know. These are like the discussions people are having. Like, what do we do with this massive technology? How do we view it, especially as a creator? Adam, good to have you on, brother. Yes.
Very happy to be here. So thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I know you, Adam, are creative at heart. Like
Yep.
you've used creative and combined technology. You did that with Web3, with NFTs, right? And you've helped like use your creative mind to really merge technology. Mm-hmm. And I think NFTs are still a thing, mm-hmm. But in comparison to scale, AI is just a whole nother level in terms of like what's happening with the creator economy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'd just love to get your thoughts about what do you see as the future of creatives and what role does AI play with that?
Everything. I think, I've been in this advertising industry for 18 years. And, when I got in, it really was about a few key principles to making great work.
Yes.
And you had some tools that you had access to. It was limiting. But now, today, with AI and all the innovation that's been happening over the past, 5-10 years, it has just changed everything about how we think about creation in general.
Right.
So, in the ad world, you'd come up with an idea for a brand, and then you'd have to hire all these other people to help execute your vision.
Right.
But today, I really don't need them.
Right.
To the same capacity as I do because I have AI.
Right.
And I think it's going to be impossible to move forward without incorporating it into your skill set, because it gives you the ability to move at a speed in which you never would have imagined. I don't want to ever cut out those that helped in the past or helped build things,
right.
But it really is going to become a massive skill set that everyone has to learn to continue pursuing creativity.
But I imagine businesses are going to have expectations because there's already been this pressure to on your clients to bring down costs. I don't know how are your clients talking about AI? Do they just assume like, okay, you should be able to do this for less because AI is here now? Do they make that assumption? If so, how do you navigate something like that?
Okay, so this is a very recent topic. I'd say over the past 16 months, I've been meeting with most of the clients talking about AI because I think AI is can be seen in so many different facets.
Right.
I think we typically think of AI as like ChatGPT, or you got the Midjourney for visuals, but then there's like AI from a productivity standpoint and an efficiency standpoint that most people aren't even thinking about. So I think when we've approached them, we try and communicate as best as possible, one, the creative opportunities that it can unleash and unlock and make for you, but then also some of the side effects, I'd say, for using AI, that to some extent we still don't know where some assets come from. Yes, we want to partner with those that license, et cetera. Right. So you kind of balance the risk and reward. I haven't seen too many clients say, I want to totally move over to AI. I think they're exploring the possibilities of what it can do and how we would use it to either attract talent, new customers, or more revenue. Some examples could be we are very used to going to like a delta.com and instead of waiting 6 minutes for a callback, we can text. But what if that chatbot relationship was actually a 3D avatar that was built on AI who could actually talk to you about your needs of your upcoming travel visually.
Right.
So, there's AI platforms that are turning the old antiquated chatbots into people
Exactly.
to make them more human. And I think, for maybe that brand, that actually might create a better connection between the brand and the customer. So I think we're looking at different ways to incorporate it where we can see value, and it can, and not just for the brand, but for the customer as well. So I think we're not just looking at AI as like a blanket like replacement. It's like, where can it really solve a problem?
So you're creative naturally, and we had this conversation offline about like how both of us, because I consider myself a creative in some ways, and I have ADHD, I have a million things on my mind, and I have found it useful to actually use ChatGPT and multiple tools of artificial intelligence to really help me bring out all these thoughts and organize it. I'm curious, as a creative, how have you used it, and what are some tools that, from a creative point of view, that a creator should embrace based upon your experience?
Sure. So I'll give you a few examples. I'm an artist by trade and designer, but I also know my limitations. So, one thing I use Midjourney for almost every single day is basically a digital sketchbook. So any ideas I have, whether it's a character or a story, I just jot it down, prompt it, and output kind of like a digital memory. So I think from a visualization standpoint, I'm using it obsessively.
Right.
For so many reasons. One, I can't draw as fast as I think. Two, I know my limits, and sometimes I just can't produce what I'm visualizing with the tools I have.
Right.
And it helps me do a lot of, like, I'd say daydreaming.
Right.
We have great ideas sometimes,
Yeah.
and sometimes I can't find all these people to think through it or put it down, and it just helps me in 30 seconds output something that will help me remember where I want to go next. From like a ChatGPT standpoint, I am not a writer.
Right.
I might be a good storyteller, I might have great ideas, but when it comes to like structurally writing things, I need it for help, whether it's emails, feedback, reviews, emailing customer service about a problem. I think that it helps me eliminate a lot of the friction. It gets me to go from A to B,
Right.
And it lets me put my thoughts down and then format in a way that someone would want to receive it. And then I think from an AI standpoint, in just like creative exploration,
Yeah.
it's opening me up to how utilizing more than just one tool can really unlock so many more ways to be expressive as a creative.
Right.
Sure, I'll use Midjourney to create an image, but putting it in Firefly and adapting it, stretching it beyond the initial cropping and letting me change things is actually really getting me to think differently about how the creative output could be at the end. Instead of like hiring someone to do a photo shoot with a person wearing a blue shirt, now I can have that person, I can adapt the clothing, on the computer using AI until I see it as a viable product. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, like, I think about like, I think there's really this debate. I had another a designer on my podcast. It's just the last podcast that just came out. His view was he definitely uses AI, but his view was that AI it won't make you creative. It's not, or I say it this way, it doesn't replace creativity. For those who rely on that solely, they will be outpaced by those who are creative and use it. What is your thought on that?
Yeah, I think AI is creative. I mean, it has to be to some extent. I think that you're gonna have to understand how to use AI to truly be creative versus it being like a set it and forget it. I think there's an element of creativity of prompting and creating the output, but at the end of the day too, I think it all comes down to taste, style, and sensibility.
Yeah.
So anyone can put anything into the prompt and see a result, but unless you have taste and style,
right,
you're only going to reach a certain threshold. Like, you know, there was a wave at the early, I'd say, end of 21, where like I think everyone just got tired of AI because they're like, everything looks the same.
Right.
And then there were some modifications and updates, and you see people starting to incorporate real design into what the initial output is, and that's where it starts to really unlock the possibilities. So like I think it's a healthy blend. Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it. Like I went to this performance I think it was last week, and a performer that's coming to MidwestCon, Lisa Fancified actually is her name. She had a performance about authentic intelligence. Mm-hmm. It said in the age of AI, what's gonna still matter is kind of like similar to what you're saying, taste and style. Mm-hmm. What makes you an authentic person, an authentic creator, and thinking about how you put that and then get ideas and other expressions for that. And so like, how do you balance that out? Like how do you advise people to think about, how do you tap into your authentic self? What does that look like for you?
I mean, I think I use the same lens that I apply at work. Like if you have an idea, your first go at it is like go to Getty or stock photography site to find something that reflects an element of the vision, and then you hope that you can go shoot it, and that's where your craft, style, and taste come out in the final execution. I think that comes with years of experience.
I agree.
And there is a big difference between good and great, you know, and I think those sites like, you know, that have stock photography serve a real purpose. But when you want to elevate the craft and creativity, you do have to have, and I think, an element of expertise and experience to up-level the work. Otherwise, you're just going to get the status quo.
Yeah, I agree. And I think about when I think about the creativity that a lot of that was generated out of the 80s and the 90s, and I'm just thinking about music right now. Not to say we don't have any creativity now. We have some, but it's nothing compared to like the 80s and 90s, early 2000s. And I'm not saying that just because we're a little more seasoned, old a little bit. But what I'm saying is that, like, you look at, think about Michael Jackson, right? How much effort he put into his craft, in terms of being able to dance, perform, write, produce. Like, so I do think people have this sense that AI, you don't need to do some of these things. I believe to get that authentic self, to get that authentic kind of like what makes you great, you still have to go through some of that work and process, and AI can enhance that. I think that it's people that are just looking to think that they can be mediocre, that those people will have some trouble, because I think people can still tell when there's no authenticity put into it, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I know we probably sound old saying that, like,
we probably do.
You know, I still think that people need to start off on the ground floor and learn how things are made before they can skip steps. You know, again, me using AI in everything now isn't shortcutting anything for me. I still draw every day and use my brain, but there is an element that is, you know, a bit speedier to market than I'm used to, but I'm still applying the same sort of taste, sensibility, style, and years of experience in the output. It's just manifesting differently.
Yeah. I also think authenticity, I know we're leaning heavy into this, but I think it's important, is like a lot of folks aren't used to doing this either. Like in terms of like, you know, newer generations, it's because everything can't be replaced with technology. Everything can't be replaced with a text message. People will tell you, like, even the most expert people in implementing technology, it's three things in order to do it right: people, process, which is learning stuff, then technology, right? So like, but people think you can start with technology and work backwards, and that's the problem, right? And that's why I think we produce a lot of things that seem similar, because to me, music sounds really similar now. Like, for the most case, there are exceptions. There are some very creative people, and that's one example, but there are others, and people I think will die for that taste and style and that authenticity to come.
I noticed this the other day, though. It's getting harder and harder to really see what's real and what isn't real, though. And I think, like, as an artist, as much as I love this stuff, it is a bit of a battle, because if you open X or Instagram and you see all this beautiful photography and art, it does beg the question: is it real anymore, or is it not? Because
how do we got that? Like, what's your thought on that? Like, what should we do about that?
I don't. Well, I think that there's a few ways the government and other companies have talked about, like, calling out and truly identifying what is AI.
Yeah.
But I think in general, like, I'm questioning if people even appreciate real art anymore.
Yeah.
Because I can make, to some extent, what I do in Mid-Journey in a few seconds.
True.
So I don't want to lose that appreciation for real handcrafted
So
art.
you're not sure if people do?
I don't know.
My hope, maybe I'm an optimist, is that people will still want to connect with people.
I definitely think that's true.
Right.
I think, I've seen sales slip for a lot of artists.
Right.
Or people just being like, it's cool. Like,
Yeah.
I can make it.
Yeah.
So I'm really concerned about, like, people's well-being and career.
That kind of goes to what we talked about too with Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry was building, I think, an $800 million studio in Atlanta. He saw Sora AI and halted production, and said, and I think his words were like, "We have to figure out what this policy looks like because it's, this made him stop." Like, obviously something that's going to have a lot of support for a lot of creatives in a big industry. So
Right.
I think your concerns are well founded.
I mean, when I saw that article, I was a little frustrated.
Why were you frustrated?
Because when you look at what Sora and other people have done with Runway, you should look into Runway. They have done an amazing job with conceptualizing ideas, like nuggets of ideas. There was a gentleman on X. I can't keep saying X. It's it's Twitter.
Yeah,
but,
I just can't say it. I can't get around X either.
He was the first person who did
the platform formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah.
There you go.
He created the first movie trailer totally built with AI. He used ChatGPT, Mid-Journey, Runway, and other tools, and it looked phenomenal. It was like Dune meets Star Wars. I think he used CapCut to edit it, but you got to go shoot that. You got to get into production. So I worry that, like, just assuming that these tools can replace all the handcrafted storytelling is a little too far-fetched right now. I understand that maybe he wants to cancel it because wants to think about, like, who's really needed in this $800 million studio moving forward, but to kind of pause and halt thinking that it's going to replace a lot, I think is a little troublesome too for jobs in Atlanta and people's careers.
We're focused a lot here at the University of Cincinnati, as well as MidwestCon. Like, what does policy look like around data? Like, because when we talk about AI, it's really, we're talking about data, and so, like, I'm really thinking about, like, if we don't get this right. To your point, like, what I fear could happen is that people don't know what's real and what's not, right? And the initial part, people might like it because the algorithms know us better than we know ourselves in some ways. But we've also seen the negative side of algorithms that don't have any type of restraint. That is what I call social media right now, right? Like, we've seen that. At least that's my perspective. I can probably say that a lot of social media companies started off with the best of intentions. I think Facebook was about connecting the world, right? That happened until it disconnected the world because then the algorithms took over, and the goal was engagement at all costs. It wasn't about making sure the world was connected. It became, how do I keep you glued? And how people stay glued is that they're always mad and arguing with each other, right? So that's what they give people, and it's hacking their brains in some way. I do have that fear that it could hack our brains, and then it could also do something where enough people get upset that they want to shut down innovation, which is also bad. So I believe the most important thing we need to do is figure out a way to do this and still keep trust. I think it needs to be augmented intelligence, not completely artificial. And I think we got to find that balance, and because I still think people will want to. Maybe I'm naive, and I still think people will want to connect with people, and I think we should know if we're talking to a person,
right,
or a false person. And some people, and entertainment is fine, right? If I'm watching Disney, I know what's happening, right? But if someone's pretending to be Adam Kahn, I need to know if it's you or it's fake, and if it is a fake version of you, that you approved it,
right?
Because that's you,
right?
And like we don't know. We have laws, I guess, that are going to protect your image and likeness, but it's we're entering into an area that, like you said, we just don't know. Like, what shouldn't we do with AI? If you had to say what we've talked about, what we can do, what should be off the table from your perspective?
Make it the only thing we interact with.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's where you get to like AGI and some craziness.
Right.
I do think I've listened to a lot of podcasts. It's going to be really hard to like crack down on what's real and fake. I think to a point where I've like almost given up like reading the news or going through X or Twitter.
You don't. That's where you get fake.
I don't know what's real or fake, and I do think that's going to just totally screw up this next generation in understanding like what's really happening in the world versus what people are telling you is happening.
Well, that's good. So how do you go about getting your news then?
I don't turn it on. No, I know. My wife has gotten so mad at me lately because I'm just refuse to watch it because everything is so skewed.
You're like me.
To a perspective.
So I have a line I've said often. News is to the mind as sugar is to the body. It's a hit, but then it takes you down. It makes you actually feel some type of reaction, but then you go downward. It's meant to do that too. We don't need actually as much information as we get. That's also part of the problem.
Right.
But I do think something I do is I try not to look at the news on Twitter or anything else. I do read long form content, and I'll maybe listen to a podcast about something because that's less likely to trigger your brain than seeing a reaction. Because on social media, the goal is to capture your attention. It's not to inform you. So I try to pull myself back, but most people, it's by the way, it's impossible to do it all the time. Most people don't.
No, I listen to a lot of podcasts because I think that's kind of where I get my source for like tech and all that stuff happening in the world. But even local news and the paper, it's just so depressing.
It is, though. The goal is to depress you and get you in anger. And I'm like, I'm not doing it.
I remember, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I called my buddy. I used to live in Manhattan, and I called him. I was like, dude, what is going on there? And he's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
He's like, it's a nice day out. I'm in Union Square. And I'm like, well, the news just said there was like a shooting here and then a murder there and then someone got dragged. And he's like, yeah, no, we're
good. We're good. It's like,
okay, well, this is a little scary.
Yeah. All right. So what do you want? Like, what would you tell future creatives, people that are in this world that are just starting? Like, let's phrase it this way: you're a creator. You've always been. It's in your heart. What advice would you give yourself as a younger creator? Right. You're talking to young Adam Kahn, and then what advice would you ignore?
What advice would I give the younger Adam? No, I typically say nothing because I like that I made all these mistakes.
Right.
But and failed a million times. I think the advice I'd give my younger self is like don't cut corners.
Yeah.
Obviously, we had less tools back then, and focus more on the craft you want to be excellent at. I think I tried a lot of things. Whether it was going into the movie industry or being an artist. And I think I wish I had spent more time crafting certain things that I thought could be really great strengths.
Right.
And don't be afraid to fail and fail and fail and fail, because I think that's where you get the most learning experiences.
No, agreed. All right, another lightning round question. This always trips up people. What's an important truth you have that very few people agree with you on?
Truth that I have, oh man, as it relates to my own art,
anything, man,
that I don't want your feedback. I think that hopefully I don't get dinged for saying this, but when I was in art school, my professor went up to a piece that I had made and asked me kind of a tough question to answer as an 18-year-old. And he said, he's like, let's look at this. Let's talk about this piece. Are you masturbating or doing art? And I was like, what?
Wow.
And
only art teachers, but yeah.
And that has stuck with me forever. And really, I think the crux of it is, are you doing art for yourself or are you doing art for others?
Right.
And I think when I do art, it really is for me. And for the most part, like I think that it's the one thing that I own, that I want to create what I want versus it being like nipped and tucked by budgets and constraints. And so I think that would be my one truth. Sometimes art's just for me.
Yeah, and I think I would argue the greatest artists probably have that. Like I think about like they probably didn't go out and think about what everyone's opinion is going to be, and like how can I make something great? It's greatness comes from within, and then you share it with the world. It is your unique experience. Like kind of going back to the authentic intelligence, right? I actually think we all are artists in our own way. We're all expressing ourselves in this world with whatever God gave us. We have to figure out how to use that. And if we listen to too many voices, it can drown out who you are. That doesn't mean don't listen to people. I don't want people to take that. But I do believe one of the problems we're facing in this generation is that social media has it that you do things to compare yourself to others and not figure out how to get in tune with what makes you great.
Yep.
I mean, I just think I think that's a really good truth that you have, and that's why you're able to be creative. Because if you're trying to be like everybody else, you come up with art that's like everything else. Right.
Yeah.
All right. You got a committee of 3. They can be living. They can be dead. You can combine living and dead.
Yep.
They can advise you on business, life, creativity. Tell me who these 3 people are and why.
Steve Jobs, I think for obvious reasons. Jake Burton, the founder of Burton Snowboards. I guess quickly because, at a time when there were, 2 plankers, skiers, ruled the mountain, there was one individual who really pursued a different sport, and it got rejected over years and years and kind of built one of the largest snowboarding companies. So I think, he's not living anymore, but I would love to know how he got through all the tough times and pursued a vision that was honestly widely rejected. So that would be my question for him. And then finally, MC Escher was one of the first artists I ever saw as a child. And it was the kind of art that I just stared at for hours being like, how did you do this? And I think those 3 people have always been really interesting to me from, someone who went against the grain for design and innovation and had really strong beliefs in what greatness is, and then someone that went against the current when it came to trends and popularity, and then just art for the sake of doing art and blowing your mind, I think is always just fascinating.
All right. If you had a motto in life, a slogan, what is it? It
kind of ties into my art, but it's simple. It's I am what I am, and what I am is me.
I love it. Adam, pleasure having you on, brother.
Thank you very much for having me, Rob. I appreciate it.
This was great.